Welcome back to From the Bridge. I'm your captain and host, Rick Jones. This is episode 8 of season 2. And today we're going to talk about experiential marketing and what's new with Mobile Marketing Enterprises owner and founder Bob Lewis. We'll have an important soapbox and another On the Road with Rick segment. We'd love to hear from listeners out there. My email address is rick@fishbaitmarketing.com. Again, rick@fishbaitmarketing.com. Let us know how we're doing in season 2 with any thoughts, comments, and suggestions. I recently told you that we had been targeting experiential and mobile marketing agencies about the places and assets we have third and fourth quarter. I told an agency on a recent Zoom call to look at our properties in college sports, country music, and food festivals as a theme park, and they get to bring along the rides. Well, what will those rides look like in a coronavirus world? Let's start with the physical world. How will we make our interactives and activations safe, yet fun and engaging? Can we give away premiums or product samples? Can we safely serve food? Will our staff members have to wear masks? Will we require the fans to wear masks? How do we disinfect our activation areas? How do we limit the number of people in the activation area? What liabilities do we have if a fan says that he or she got the virus from our event? Can you really completely release our liability with a release form the fan signs? Are we having fun yet answering these questions? For the past 5 weeks, my sister agency, Engagement Partners, has been hosting a series of webinars featuring guest speakers discussing a variety of these types of issues and providing suggested solutions. We've brought people from all over the world that have expertise in things like disinfecting or crowd management or wayfinding or medical or legal, and they've provided great insight. So if you want to watch these webinars, just send me an email again at rick@fishbaitmarketing.com, and I'll send you a link to these webinars. Of course, we've known for a number of years that we needed to extend the reach of engagement for our activation events by creating virtual extensions. The coronavirus has accelerated that need, and many agencies have stepped up their game to provide these virtual extensions, or in some cases, even completely virtual events. These include not only live or taped activations, but ways to continue the conversation and engagement after the event is over. We've repeatedly talked about your tribe on our podcast, but now more than ever, accessing and engaging with your tribe in a virtual or social distancing world is ever more critical. What will activations look like this fall? If you're like us, you're still trying to figure that out. It's time to climb back up on the old soapbox. Our friend Bob Lewis was extremely forthcoming today about his battles with ADHD and anxieties. We still seem to have a problem about openly talking about mental issues and illnesses, don't we? Millions of people around the world suffer, in many cases silently, because of the supposed stigma of mentally related problems. My son Ryan, who is a brilliant thinker and writer, has long suffered from anxiety-related depression. It's been a long and difficult process for him, but at least we can talk about it and don't try to hide from it or wish it would go away. Depression is a serious disease. And it is a disease, just like hypertension or diabetes. I do know this. Mental health and anxiety issues are rising, especially for young people, and no one is immune to it, including athletes. The first Saturday in October this fall, many schools in the Southeastern Conference will celebrate the inaugural 3-day college football Mental Health Awareness Week. This is an initiative of the Helensky Hope Foundation, which was created by Mark and Kim Helensky, the parents of Tyler Helensky, who was the former quarterback at Washington State, who committed suicide. Tyler won the number 3. And so this year, a lot of teams are going to wear the number 3 and a patch on their jersey. Tyler's younger brother, Ryan, is the starting quarterback at South Carolina, and they're one of the schools that will participate in this program. The goal is to increase every school's mental health resources, eliminate stigmas, and honor the victims of mental illness. This is a great start to better understand and help those suffering from mental illnesses. And that's today's Soapbox. My guest today is the founder of Mobile Media Enterprises and a real pioneer in the field of experiential marketing activations. Bob Lewis has been one of the pioneers on mobile marketing and on-site fan engagement activations. He has done many, many innovative things in his past, but is not standing on his laurels, but looking ahead to the future of experiential marketing. Let's bring Bob aboard. Bob, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Rick. Always good to talk to you.
Well, we're glad to have you today. We've been spending a lot of time talking about experiential marketing and, what is it going to look like in a current coronavirus world. But let's go back to the beginning. Talk a little bit about your career and what made you ultimately get involved in mobile marketing and experiential marketing.
Well, Rick, I was in broadcast in my early days back in Atlanta in sales, and I did very well and got into management pretty quickly. And, I just wasn't the perfect corporate citizen when it comes down to following corporate ladder achievement. I'm an innovator, I'm an entrepreneur, and so I broke out on my own in the early 90s, actually. And developed a business it was basically all built around Airstreams. I basically built Airstreams for radio stations. Radio diners is what they were called.
Wow,
and I
that's
sold
cool.
Sold them to country cafes. I sold them to classic rock did all that. And I realized that the vehicle was pretty important to the activation for radio stations. And then I sort of matured that into a experiential marketing business, which back in the day was touring. It was mobile marketing in the early form. And so that's how I got into the space, and we were early. So that was 1992 that I started, getting into the experiential space and, build it up from there.
My producer, Lindsay Collins, just said she wanted to know when you were going to deliver her Airstream. She said she wanted one of those. We see them on the road all the time. They're hard to find today. Especially the older ones. Yeah.
We built a dozen for 12 radio stations across the country in 1 year. We put double stacked windows all the way around them. So they look like the diner, and we put a radio studio on one end and then seating for consumers. So the Good Rock Cafe or Classic Rock Cafe or Good Time Oldies Diner or the Country Cafe. And they were beautiful. They're now all in Europe.
Wow. Well, you had a number of key clients and what I call signature projects over the year. Talk about some of those.
Well, we basically did almost all of AT&T's activation work we executed for about 5 agencies for AT&T starting in 1998. And we picked up steam in 2002 and all the way through 2013 we were doing AT&T activation work, and it was singular. And, AT&T, then singular, then back to AT&T. So that was a tremendous amount of work for us. We basically did 60 major events a year, everything from the Rose Bowl to, the College World Series to every activation you can think of. AT&T would be on the ground for. We were doing the event work. Final Four was a good big example. Another signature client for us was Walmart. We were doing thousands of events inside Walmart, and we helped Walmart change their experiential marketing. The demo business inside Walmart, we turned into more experiential. And our company was so successful with what we did there, it changed how Walmart did their events inside stores. And I was applauded on if you've ever heard about the Friday morning meetings at Walmart at their headquarters, our team was applauded on the floor on a Friday morning because of our work helping them in their meat department, do events. We had 88% sustained lift through the activations we did in store, and we reinvented the space for them. And that turned into a big business called shopper marketing.
What do you think makes successful fan engagement activities? I mean, both from a mobile standpoint or from an in-store. Are there any common themes or commonalities between the two?
Certainly the richness of the engagement itself. I mean, you've got to offer something that's intriguing and lights up the consumer and provides an experience that they appreciate. And so it's a lot about entertainment, Rick. When I look at it, it's we're in the entertainment business, and whether it's inside a store or it's at a festival or at a sports arena, it's entertainment. And so you've got to bring education into that. So it's edutainment, it's retailtainment, it sort of hinges on entertainment for us.
Well, you use that other E word, education. I know you've done a number of projects and are continuing to look at other projects in the educational space. And, we're seeing that it's primarily young people today are learning differently.
Yes.
They were born in many cases with a PDF in their hands. There's a device that gives them access to all the information in the world, and so they're doing that. I recently took a young person to the aquarium here in South Carolina in Charleston, and they had live lemurs, and she wanted to look at the computer story of the lemurs more than look at the live lemurs. And it showed, I was like, oh my goodness, how brainwashed are they? But you are working on some interesting educational kind of concepts. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I've really seen the need for experiential learning for kids because it's so much more engaging. And, kids today are so farther ahead than we were at this time in their life because all the content that comes at them. So they're sort of bored. They don't really respond to just sitting in a chair, attending a class, going through the typical protocols. Experiential learning is really important, and it's engaging, and the recall on that's fabulous. So yeah, I've put a fair amount of effort into a combination of educational programs, which are meaningful to me and meaningful to the customer itself, the consumer, the student. So yeah.
Well, yeah, and fighting the boredom, I think it's going to be really interesting. We've gone, through this process of, in many cases, the last half of the year educationally, moms and dads and others have had to homeschool children, and they've done it largely with technology. They've done it with access to information. I think it's going to be interesting when kids finally get to go back to school. Have we changed the entire educational model based on the coronavirus?
Yeah, I got a good friend who used to be a vendor for us, a technology vendor in the experiential space, Felipe Summer. And he started a company called Nearpod. And his company is blowing up because it's allowing teachers, it's perfectly suited for what's going on with coronavirus with kids learning from a distance. And it's allowing each kid to be interactive with the teacher in real time so she can then see how if they got 30 students in a class, 27 of them are getting this engagement, and here's 3 questions that were posed, a very interactive platform, and it just blew up for them. And I just talked to him recently because I've got a startup myself that's involved with kids, and it's experiential learning. So that's quite exciting to me, and so he could very well be a partner for us.
Well, my wife taught first grade for a number of years, and she was not against the concept of no child left behind, but she said that the negative to that is no child necessarily got ahead, and that we tended to teach to the mean. We wanted to lift people, but in the case of lifting people, you also brought others down to the mean. And I think technology is going to allow children to go as far as they possibly want to go. And because I think the key to civilization and the key to the American way is taking really smart kids and illuminating their gifts and giving them skills to go on and be even more successful. And I think your platform you're talking about is going to be able to do that.
Yeah, it's the most exciting thing I've been involved with. We speak about experiential right now, and how do we pivot in that space? And for me, a lot of it is integrating socially responsible activations and socially responsible partnerships, so that what we are doing is meaningful to us and meaningful to the respondent participant, and that, I don't care if it's education or it's in live events, is it meaningful? Are we doing something, important? We've got a client Hallmark channel that MME Live has served for the last number of years for the fourth quarter and doing activations. And we presented a concept to them called Give Kindness. And we actually trademarked that term and began to develop an app that would allow people to give the gift of kindness for the holidays. So they might commit to giving 10 random acts of kindness to a grandmother, just as a gift. It doesn't cost them anything other than being kind. And so, yes, everything right now is pivoting around, that sort of leaning towards care, leaning towards kindness. And obviously, when you talk about experiential in our space, we're also dealing with safety measures. Last year we were in all sorts of cable stores around the fourth quarter with a live Santa, with gourmet hot chocolate bars and wrapping stations for gift wrapping. And this year, whether or not the stores want live Santa with kids sitting on Santa's lap, so we're going through the whole process of pivoting with different ideas that still provide a nice consumer experience, but it could very well be in front of the store on the sidewalk, rather than inside the store.
Yeah, I think one of the side positives of this is it's going to force us to think differently.
Yes.
We're literally turning that Rubik's Cube in every direction, saying, do we socially distance? How do we cue people? How do we keep them safe? How do we disinfect? How do we do product sampling? But human beings want to be touched, and they want to sample, and they want to, and so it's a really interesting juxtaposition between what we want to be able to do and what we're going to be able to do.
Well, we have to come up with a touchless distribution of hot chocolate. So, we've gone through every iteration of modeling that so that the marshmallows are pre-packed in a little, 10 marshmallows in a little plastic pouch, and same thing with mints. And, we're using backpacks to dispense the hot chocolate. So we basically pour it into a cup that you've pulled out of our dispenser. And so we are not communicating or touching with that consumer. And it's a touchless distribution of product. And so, you have to pivot. You have to put your head on straight to think through every touch point, much like when we go to the grocery store. How do we go through those steps without, reducing our component touch?
Yeah, and at the end of the day, no matter what this happens, you still have to be engaging. You still have to educate, and you got to keep people involved. I want to switch gears a little bit. I know you've begun to do some work in experiential marketing in the cannabis category. I think this is a high growth area in sponsorship, in event marketing. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, clearly, the U.S. was hoodwinked back in the early 1900s, Rick. If you go back to the history, this product's been around since 500 BC, and it was an industrial giant and it was a medicinal giant in the early 1900s, and it became so impactful that the titans, the Carnegies, the Rockefellers, the Hearsts, the DuPonts, sort of smeared the product out of the marketplace because it was impacting their forestry and their chemical business and their oil business and their steel business, because the product is so multi-purpose. And so if you go back and understand the product's form, it was a medicinal agent back in that time frame and all the way back to 500 BC. So it's going to be a change agent for healthcare. It's just going to take time, and it's going to take people learning and hearing from friends and so forth. I went for the last 2 years to all these conferences and all these events, and I got very involved. And I started to build what I called Can Strong Partners. Because I saw that the missing link to the acceptance of cannabis was public service announcements. There's no educational messaging. The industry is all about, lobbying, but it's not doing a good job at all in communicating the benefits and sharing the history and the stories behind it. And so it's really become sort of a person-to-person sharing. And so I've become sort of I call myself CBD Bob, because I ultimately am a big fan, and I stumbled into it, and I've had a bad knee for years, and all of a sudden I'm not limping. And it's because I stumbled into trying the product as a sample at one of the conferences. And I was just like, I was out with a bunch of 30-somethings at, South by Southwest. And all of a sudden I'm dancing at night. My knee's not bothering me. And it's like, I'm I'm a good 30 years older than they are. Let's just say that. And it was an eye opener for me to see, I didn't see myself as a patient. I just was trying it as a sample, and all of a sudden the benefits started, it just was straight up, wow, this is really amazing. And I can't imagine any senior in this marketplace right now that wouldn't want to take CBD and learn how to come up with their own formula, if you will, and how they imbibe it and ingest it. And it's certainly legal, and it's not something you should be running from. But you need to do your homework. Most people don't know a lot about the product, and there are snake oils out there just like any other industry. So you have to be careful and understand where the products come from, and are they grown properly and processed properly and so forth. But it's a really a miracle product.
Well, it seems to be, this is a natural product that seems to be helping a lot of people, especially people with attention disorders and anxieties, both of which contribute to significant loss of productivity in our country. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I'm probably a really good example. My clock, my cadence goes like this. And I'm not a stress person, but, focus for me is really important. And I can only say that, my focus has never been better when I've taken CBD, which has a 3% THC factor. So it's not like, you're getting high, but it does give me a calm. It gives me a little bit more of a relax agent that I could certainly use at that level. It's not something that, reduces my ambition. It propels me to be a more deep thinker and to be more focused. And, my wife is sort of looking at me going like, wow, you're on fire right now. And I've not seen this from you in quite some time. And I'm going to give a lot of credit to my daily CBD consumption because it is a calming factor. It reduces inflammation. That's CBD. And there's obviously various generations of the product all the way up to THC-based cannabis, and certainly what it's doing for folks with epilepsy. My father had epilepsy, and he took a medication that was so strong, and it took him and dulled him for about 15 years of his life. And it was hard to watch.
Yeah, the side effects from drugs, it's always the unintended consequences. Every time I watch a pharmaceutical ad on TV, the last 10 seconds, they try to tell you, all the things that may happen by taking this drug. And yet here we have a natural product that you can, in many cases, I call self-regulate or self-medicate to know what works for your body.
Yeah, if you read blogs from women, it's all about finding the balance, to find that sort of where it works for you, where it's not impacting your thinking mode in the sense of, making you dull or whatever. But yeah, everyone has to find their own balance and the way they want to ingest it and how often they consume it. I do drops under my tongue, a tincture, twice daily, once in the morning and once at night, and I don't limp. My wife takes it. She used to have super strong stress around her shoulders, her neck, and more stomach issues. She takes it for a combination of reasons. So there's more than one remedy that it delivers.
Well, let's bring it full circle. Let's talk about this intersection of cannabis products and experiential marketing, because I really do believe that may be the leading way to educate people.
Yeah, I've actually spent a fair amount of time working with a lot of brands. Most of them right now don't have the money to, expend on expensive marketing. And we all know that experiential, the cost per engagement, is not the cheapest form. And that's why digital took off like it did, but the fundamentals of a one-to-one communication where I can control the conversation, and talk first person. One of my biggest learning curves when I used to work for a GM and helping sell cars was every person that stood in front of a GM car, a Saturn back in the day, had driven a Saturn and were Saturn fans. So if you think about how do we employ the force to talk about CBD or cannabis, it's got to be from a user perspective. So the recruiting has to start with people who are fans, and they can then talk so meaningful, the personal stories, and that's going to be huge in the space. But education, it's not for everybody. You've got there's a lot of change occurring sort of in a combined form right now, but it's the etiquette of cannabis and the way we talk about it with our bosses, our friends, our neighbors, our parents. It all has to evolve. It has to take baby steps, and where people come to respect or expect that it's okay. That's not, if someone's doing cannabis off to the side, it's not going to turn them into monsters. It's going to, relax them, make them, sometimes more open and creative.
Well, and we need more of that today than ever before. I look at how technology can give us access to information, but it can't make us wiser. It can't make us necessarily more creative. And we've got problems in our world: social problems, business problems, medical problems. That creativity is going to be essential to driving us forward. Hopefully for the next couple of decades.
Well, clearly, the fact that we are all connected 24/7, and even when we go traveling, it's increased anxiety, it's increased tension, stress levels. So, there's got to be some sort of, means to be able to pacify that, to, remedy that. And, CBD, in its by itself, or cannabis, I think will be a really, really, it will be a change in healthcare. It'll bring a more natural form of healthcare. I'm a pretty big supporter of natural healthcare. So I've been a big fan of chiropractic. It's changed my one son's life. It's helped me, so I'm a natural care advocate, and I put, cannabis in that same school.
Well, my wife does a lot with essential oils, and she's a big believer. I mean, I burned my hand, the other day, and she gets out the lavender, and it works. I mean, there's just, let's face it, we human beings have been on the planet for a long, long time, and they found natural products that remedied lots of things. And
Yes, they did.
then we let the pharmaceutical companies, the money drive, and the synthetics drive things again, and we got away from the natural world, and I think we need to get back to that.
Well, DuPont was a big part of the banning of, when you think about Hearst and Rockefeller and Carnegie and DuPont, they were a big part of banning, cannabis, back in the day, and hemp, as it was known back then, and for a reason, because the natural medicinal value countered with the oncoming chemical and pharma uses of pre-developed synthetic medicines. And so it's there's a lot of history behind all of it, that's for sure.
Well, this has been really interesting stuff today, just absolutely great stuff. And Bob, I can't thank you enough for joining us and being with us today from the bridge.
Love to be part of it, Rick, as always.
We've discussed some pretty serious subjects today, so let's go somewhere fun on the road with Rick. It's Lambert's Cafe in Sikeston, Missouri. They have similar restaurants in both the Ozarks and in Foley, Alabama, but I like the original one the best. They have tremendous food, huge portions with sides served pass-around family style. Sides like fried okra and fried potatoes, black-eyed peas, mac and cheese. With entrees like steaks, fried chicken, chicken pot pie, pork loin, and fried catfish, just to name a few. But the real fun is that they throw, yes, I said throw, hot, just out of the oven rolls the size of softballs. From across the room into your hands and then into your mouth. It's a really fun atmosphere with good friends and laughs all around. That's Lambert's Cafe on the road with Rick. Thanks for being with us today. As always, I hope you got something out of listening, and we hope to see you next week.